Today we're going to go over the properties of exponents. The first one is called the product of powers. Product of powers happens when it's the product, so multiplication. So when we multiply two things together and they have the same base. So the base in this case is going to be 2. So if we have 2 to the third times 2 to the fourth, what we're actually going to do is add those exponents together. As long as they're the same base, which is 2, we add 3 plus 4. We're going to end up with 2 to the 7th power. All of these can also work with variables instead of numbers. And so if we had x to the third times x to the fourth, it would equal x to the 7th also. Because when we're multiplying two things with the same base, even if that base isn't x. All right, now the next one is called the quotient of powers. So as long as these have the same base, so quotient means division. And let's say we have 4 to the 7th over 4 to the third. That's going to be where we subtract exponents. So top exponent minus the bottom exponent. So we're going to write the base, and then the top exponent minus the bottom denominator exponent, and we will get 4 to the fourth. Now, if you want to find out what 4 to the fourth is, you can use your calculator and do that, but for our purposes, that will be fine as a final answer here. Next one is called a negative exponent. So just for instance, if we were doing the quotient of powers still, let's look back here and let's see what happens if we would have reversed this. 4 to the third over 4 to the 7th, we would have gotten 4 to the negative fourth. Well, here's what we do with that 4 to the negative fourth. That negative means we're going to put a 1 over the top of the positive version of what the rest is, 4 to the fourth. For instance, if we had x to the negative third, we would be putting 1 over x to the positive third. That's called the negative exponent rule. Power to a power. So if we have x to the third, and then we have parentheses, specifically in this one, raised to the power 4, that's where we multiply. Where we get x to the 12th. 3 times 4 is 12. Power of a product. And so now we have two things inside of there. So say we have 2x to the fourth raised to the third. We're going to multiply that 3 times that hidden 1 on the 2, and the 3 times 4. So we're going to distribute that 3. So it's 2 to the third x to the 12th. And that would be our final answer there. Similar to with power of a quotient, we are going to have, say we have x over y to the 7th to the negative second. We will distribute that negative 2 to that 1 and the negative 2 to that 7. So we'd get x to the negative second over y to the negative 14th. At this point, what we'd have to do is we are not allowed to have an exponent with a negative on it. So we have to do some extra work on this. So we'd write this as 1 over x squared. And then we're going to multiply times the reciprocal of this one. So down there, this would have been 1 over y to the 14th when we write it as with the rules for negative exponents. And then to do a division problem, we multiply times the reciprocal. So y to the 14th over 1. We multiply this out across the top and across the bottom. We get y to the positive 14th over x squared. Final answer there. Also, anything to the power of 0 is equal to 1. So if we have 2,132 to the power of 0, we get that equals 1. Thanks for watching.